First time and company. I never heard of that. First time and company. What is? It's a regular clock. That's what distinguishes it from a real clock.
I'm not going to go there.
Ooh, is that on?
It's too difficult. It's evening.
Wow. So on the chance that there are one or two people here this evening who have not been here before, this following our meditation on this night, we have we might call an open conversation. So anyone can participate in it who wishes and raise any issues or any questions that we'll try to clarify. And that's it.
Okay.
Oh, Susan, yeah.
Yeah, hi. I was here this morning, and I would like you to remind me one of the story of the Bodhisattva who would cry when he saw people as he was walking. And because he was sad for them because they were, I don't know. Please tell me more about that. I mean, you want to know why I want to know more about it?
You want to know why what, Susan? Why they were sad? Why he was sad?
Why he was sad.
Well, the explanation that I read on that, since I actually don't have any first-hand experience of this, was kind of a classic teaching embodied in a person. And the teaching was that oftentimes, given the truth of interdependence and the truth of karma and all, that sometimes we do things which are joyful in the time that we're doing them, we feel happy about it, and then we're actually creating some kind of negative situation that will ripen later and cause more problems. And even it wasn't quite that small. It was like maybe reactions to karma ripening from many lifetimes ago, and then reacting to certain things and creating more difficult situations. And I think the idea is that the realization of this bodhisattva was so high that he could see how this was going to unfold. So that's it. So as a result, he saw so much unfolding that was not so pleasant that he cried a lot.
Thank you, because how I got it connected with joy.
Oh, I see.
And that's why I wanted more of a story.
Yeah.
I wanted more understanding, but I also appreciate that I don't know what limitless joy is, and I basically am not experiencing any joy these days anyways. So talk to me about that.
Okay. Why are you handing the microphone away? So, can you elaborate a bit on the question? Thank you.
I wish I could.
You wish you could.
I wish I could. I mean, how I understood how, when I was first introduced to joy, my understanding of it was to really be able to just feel joy for people who were feeling joyful. And so you could really feel their joy. And so
Yeah.
it would be if someone got, if they were really happy that they got a new job, you'd be happy for them. I mean,
Yeah.
but you would feel the joy.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're referencing the 5 immeasurables. The 4 immeasurables, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, better send some flowers over there.
Oh, we're all in trouble.
The joy in the immeasurable joy aspect of the 4 immeasurables, there's various kind of ways and levels of understanding it, but one of the kind of endearing ones is the idea that you rejoice. You rejoice, in other words, you rejoice in the merit and the joy of others when they are engaged in things which are helpful for themselves and others. And it's meant to be an antidote, part of it is meant to be an antidote of judgment. So, like sometimes when we have a negative judgment that we're holding on to about someone, we can witness them doing something which is virtuous, but immediately we change it into a non-virtuous thing. Like, well, that person really is not a virtuous person. So, of course, in an infinite number of time, they're bound to do something good. But that's the only reason that they're doing it good, is that it's just by accident over this long time. And so, the immeasurable joy piece, one of the interpretations of it is that you have joy for the positive things that others do, no matter what their previous history was. If they're engaged in something positive, you rejoice and you encourage and do whatever you can to raise that higher, rather than undermine it with judgments and other things. Does it make sense?
Well, I think that kind of joy I sometimes have.
Okay.
In terms of that.
Well, there's almost nothing that we have all the time. So,
Just to piggyback on that comment, I mean, I would encourage us, I think each of us, to catch ourselves in the act of doing something right, and really appreciate our goodness. We each have moments of spacing out and not being as kind as we want to be, but I think even to cultivate our joy, it was reminded me, notice my Buddha nature. And remind myself of that and be appreciative of it. It doesn't always shine forth and flower in the way I would hope it would, but it does many times. And so don't take myself for granted and expect sainthood immediately. So I think that's a way to cultivate joy. Because I was reminded that quite often I focus on exterior things to tell myself, well, I have so many blessings and friendships and goodness in my life, but many of us outside of me. But what about what's sneakily hidden inside, called my Buddha nature? So that's just a reminder for me that helps me cultivate greater joy in what life has brought me exteriorly, but also what life has sneakily put inside of me interiorly, that it's been like a digging project for quite a while, it seems. So, yeah, so that was just a follow-up comment, not particularly a question, but yes, so thank you. And that the mic works, that's joyful.
I just wanted to put in a plug for the Dalai Lama has a new book out called The Book of Joy, which I love that title. It even went on the New York Times bestseller list, so that's kind of cool. But it's a week of interviews with the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu about how they are happy and joyful given what has happened in their countries. And it is quite beautiful, and it is quite uplifting. So just reading that book brought me some real joy. So, and it's really a sweet but profound book, The Book of Joy. Yeah.
I think joy is is perhaps the most perplexing of the four immeasurables. Well, because we tend to think of kind of fixing things. And if you're thinking about fixing things, you're thinking about something being wrong, and you're going to fix it. And the joy does have this quality, as Michael was referring to, the quality of sort of noticing something going well and kind of adding some energy to that. So it's a little bit different than the other things that are more in the category of repair. There was a certain point where I came up with this picture of like, well, I get loving kindness, this basic sense of warmth, just kind of approaching everything with a basic sense of warmth. And then in terms of meeting particular situations, in some situations there were things that would call forth compassion in a more direct way. And in other situations, things are going well, and so then rejoicing. The joy is kind of a natural piece. But they both have in terms of bodhisattva activity, they both have the quality of contributing to opening. They both have that quality, whether it's through the dissolving of confusion, the wish for dissolving of confusion, or the wish for the enhancement of positive qualities. And then, of course, the equanimity being the universal solvent that makes it apply in all situations.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
I have a question about the 8 worldly concerns, especially desire for approval and praise and fear of rejection and blame. I really struggle, I've been discovering that I really struggle with letting go of those. And repeated, for as long as I can remember, struggles with being okay with whatever people say or don't say about me. Certainly, yeah. Thanks. I'd like to know how to work with the 8 worldly concerns, because I hear a lot about letting go of them, or not being concerned with them. And and if in the meantime, until I am better at not being concerned with them, I'd like to know how I can work with them, if that's possible, or if I should just practice with dropping them, letting them go.
I would do the latter.
All right.
Get started. Well, I think there's two parts there, right? Like you said. So how do you work with them? The reason why one might say, how do I work with them, is that you recognize that they're very, very difficult, if not seemingly impossible, to let go of.
It feels compulsive.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not particular, it's not you. It's like, this is what we reference as sentient beings. Like the confusion of, it's almost at the level of the confusion of being alive in this body, in this world, is really it's really like an embodiment of the worldly concerns. It's like you can't get away from it seems. So if you couldn't get away from it, it would be cruel to teach about them. So I don't think we are cruel, and there are many ways that you can get away from them, get some relief from them. Unfortunately, one of the most profound methods of working with the 8 worldly concerns is to recognize them more continuously. So during the day, when you're doing ordinary things, you can find yourself kind of being pricked in a certain way, like uncomfortable, painful, and you look at the pain and then you make an effort to recognize the 8 worldly concerns there. And most of us, all 8 are not, we usually have specialties.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. So recognizing that concern is often not difficult if we're willing and determined to see it. And once there's a little bit of an abhorrence around being trapped, we all have an abhorrence to being locked up in a cage somewhere. And the point where we recognize that that's really what the 8 worldly concerns are. We are locked up. And it feels like we're in a cage. But when we see that, it's helpful to engage in another practice, which is not to necessarily be able to recite the 8 worldly concerns, which is not so helpful, but rather that in the moment that we kind of feel it, we see it, we can recognize that particular thing. And we can see in that moment exactly how it's brought us to this point of feeling suffering. To just be able to see that and do nothing but look at it is itself a great insight. It's like really, you feel like it doesn't have me. It's kind of like you're in that moment of the turmoil of it. You bring your awareness to it, and it's kind of like being in the tiger's cage and then recognizing at a certain point there's no tiger in here. That was a myth. When they locked me in here, they said there was a tiger. There isn't any tiger. So then it becomes another series of things, kind of levels of working with those concerns. But seeing it is the first big deal. And connecting by virtue of, do you contemplate interdependence?
Quite a bit, yes. No, not with any formal practices, but actually in conjunction with calm abiding, when I'm just kind of letting things in the mind flow by. Yep. It's pretty easy to just kind of see it at certain points.
Yeah. So contemplating interdependence is really critical to seeing the connections between our actions, whether it's speech or thoughts or just something that we do to our bodies, and we suffer, we hurt from those things, to to see those things clearly is a big step. Just to see it. Not to see it so you can fix it, just to see it. And then, of course, you see the 8 worldly concerns in your mind, your body, your speech, all of these things, kind of nurturing those things as if they were a cause of happiness. And the difficulty that anyone who's dealt with this extensively will say is, it feels like that's where I get my happiness, is from those 8 concerns. And you can mark the places where it seemed like that was the case. But if you keep your eye on it, it becomes clear that that is not the case. That it actually, best case scenario is, it is not reducing your illusion. Not adding to it, not reducing it. But the illusions around it are just absolutely sticky, like we can't put them aside. Seeing it is the first big insight. Just seeing.
Thanks.
Okay. Now what?
Well, I guess I could keep talking or somebody else could talk.
Maybe some people would like to hear what the 8 concerns are.
I doubt it, really. Check the website.
I might end up just making up. I don't know. I'll see if I can remember. But some of them might just be like synonyms for the ones I already remember. I think it's my gain, my loss, my praise, my blame, my joy, my pain.
Good and bad reputation.
Right. Yes.
So they come in pairs, and we want one, and we don't want the opposite.
Yeah.
So it's the grab and run away. I want pleasure. I don't want pain. I want gain. I don't want loss. I want praise. I don't want blame. I want a good reputation, not a bad reputation. And Venerable Chidren once, when a whole group was putting a very bad reputation onto me, when I was completely innocent and not. But she said to me, I went to her literally just in so much emotional pain, and she said, well, you know, what is a reputation? And I was like, well, wow, it's like the thing. It's the most important thing. I mean, you can lose everything, but they say not your reputation. And she said, no, actually, it's a bunch of opinions by people that change constantly. And it was dead on true. What is it? A bunch of opinions. She said, even while we're sitting here talking about it, that whole group of people, they're all talking and changing their minds, and tomorrow 3 will love you, and 3 will hate you, and 3 don't care, and next day it'll be different. And it was really helpful. That's the interdependence piece, I think, that it's not a solid person and a solid reputation, and it's all shift.
We don't have control over any of them.
Absolutely not. But I can look at my reaction. I can see. So that was quite freeing. And I've thought of that ever since. What is it? It's a bunch of opinions by people. What do they know? What do I know? So.
Good. Judith.
So I have a problem that's related to this conversation. And it really bothers me that I have this problem. And sometimes when I come here and I'm having a problem or some kind of struggle and I talk about it, it gets better. So I'm going to talk about it. I have a daily practice, and it's with my phone. And I see it, you know. Every night I spend time with my phone looking at, you know, news and entertainment, looking at all of you sometimes, but I spend time there. And I say, well, I'd really rather be practicing Dharma. And I say that all the time. And then I just am so happy to be able to spend time with my phone. I mean, it's an experience of joy. It's a reward at the end of the day, and I want to stop, but it's like I don't have any freedom to do that. You know, my mind just reaches for this, and it has been going on too long. And so I wonder if any of you had anything to say about that.
You spend too much time with your phone, you can get an iPad.
Upgrade.
I mean, I really do see it. I see it. I watch it.
Yeah.
I see it. I notice it, but it isn't going away.
What's the it?
The habit.
The habit isn't going away. The habit of reaching for the phone. Yes, so what? Just curious. Why is that a problem?
I don't think it's I don't think it's helpful for others. I don't think it's necessarily helpful for me, even though I enjoy it. I don't think it's what I really want to be investing my time in when I step back from it. I'd rather be using that time to get in a practice session in the evening, you know, a meditation session, or do some practice commitments that I'm really bad at. I'd rather be using the time more productively.
What kind of productive?
Practicing the Dharma.
What was that?
Practicing the Dharma.
Oh, practicing Dharma. That's productive.
Yes.
It could.
It could be productive. So is it just that you feel you don't have a choice?
It feels that way.
Yeah?
It feels like an addiction.
Like that what?
An addiction.
Oh,
It
an
feels like
addiction.
I don't
Yeah.
have freedom
Yeah, sure.
to make a different choice.
Yeah.
I mean, I have every now and then made a different choice and then just congratulated myself, and then the next day I go right back to it,
Yeah.
the next night.
You send somebody an email to tell them that you made the choice.
You're the
Call your
first. You're the
sponsor.
first people I've told.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's the wrong focus. Just to play devil's advocate a little bit. I think it's the wrong focus. When you say, when you intimate that you feel like you're in prison, like it's like a really solid addiction should feel that way also, then what other things do we have like that, and what do we focus on in order to free ourselves from that? Because whatever that is should work for the phone and your relationship with all the other things also. In other words, it doesn't feel to me, and I have this issue about all sorts of things, maybe more than almost anybody. And and my own relationship with it is that I don't like to be predictable to myself. And so in order to not be predictable to yourself, you have to like change things around. And when we change things around, then we become a little less predictable. Like the way you walk home, or what you have for lunch, whatever it is. Personally, I found it useful to break some things by just changing some things that appear to be completely irrelevant to the apparent addiction. Hang out with different people, invite someone to lunch that actually you don't really care to have lunch with. But of course, you're not going to tell them that. That's cheating. So,
They won't go.
yeah, they won't go. Yeah, and then you can't call it a success. So, I think it is the case that the phone, the intense addiction that our culture has with electronics in general, is really not any different than any other addiction. It doesn't seem to me like it's special in any way at all. It's just like I can look back 10 years in my life or 20 years and just see the analog of it. You know, this is just the same thing. Like just now it's got a different kind of clothing. You know, its skin color changed and a few other things, but fundamentally it's the same kind of stuck somewhere. And it takes us some time being stuck before we're realizing we're stuck. Before we're realizing that for whatever reason we made the change, it actually isn't changing. Something is replacing it that looks an awful lot like what it did before. That's my experience. And it's hard to get out of it. But it's helpful if you see, the interesting thing here is that this is your suffering, right? I mean, it's not somebody else's. Somebody else may have the same kind of suffering, but it's not your suffering. And so sometimes it's helpful to actually make certain changes in patterns with an intent to enjoy those. Like I'm going to eat expensive lunches for 3 days, which I never do, let's say, something like that. And you invite somebody to lunch, somebody who you really enjoy having lunch with, and somebody who you don't enjoy having lunch with. But then you have to, in order to get the benefit, you see, you have to fill the tank on that side. So you decide that you will, in fact, bring some kind of benefit to that person over that lunch. You will find some way to make them happy for 5 minutes, anything, just so that it's not all about Judith or all about Michael or whatever. We mix that other piece in. Well, this is my practice, so I should be living up to it, at least see what it does. And so then we run some experiments, see how that works. Can I actually have lunch with somebody who I don't really appreciate very much and enjoy the meal, and also leave with a sense that I actually gave them something they didn't have before? I'll guess that's possible. So at least we leave feeling like, well, that wasn't what I did all my other lunch days. And then we can rejoice like, well, that little thing has got, at least it's been dinged. May not be completely gone. And addiction is ubiquitous, so we can't expect anything small to undermine addiction in its broad form. But it doesn't come to an end by virtue of not making any change, so we make some change and gradually things happen. I can say that from personal experience. Oops, I just have to say, I didn't go out with lunch for you because of those reasons.
She wasn't one of
I just want to say that.
Thank you.
It was a joyful lunch.
Ditto. I didn't go out with you for lunch for that reason.
What'd you say?
I didn't go out to lunch with you for that reason either.
Yeah.
You know. So what I'm hearing is change the focus, change something, and watch how that impacts the pattern.
I have been to lunch with someone who said, we both knew that we didn't actually have much appreciation for each other, and we admitted in the beginning of lunch that actually it was difficult to have lunch together. And it's amazing. It's like we were suddenly on the same page. Yeah. I mean, in a certain way, it was like, I don't like you, you don't like me. Yeah, that's right. But it's really, because it's not like abject hatred, like I'd like to kill you. It's nothing like that. It's just the kind of stupid thing that we do. Like, I want to organize my days around people I enjoy being with and people I like and all. How boring can it get? You know, we're not challenged at all, and we call that success. So I have been with somebody who would say, I really don't like being here, but I'm here because I'm trying to discover something. And then that's kind of on my plate too, just by virtue of interdependence. We're there, we are. What are you going to do? You're going to make the best out of it. You're going to figure something out. And I think most of us practicing regularly, it's like you don't have to be a brilliant and highly realized practitioner in order to just think about, how can I deal with this in a slightly different way? In a way that will benefit myself, I'll feel good about myself, and I will have as a goal that after this meal, they will feel good about themselves too, and they will feel good about the relationship, and that's my goal. I'm going to do it. That's where I go with it, just kind of like a determination. Almost everybody, it's easy to hold the opinion that they deserve to be free of suffering and its causes. Simple. I certainly believe I deserve that. And it's pretty easy to hold that view about anybody else. I can't think of a single person that sitting here right in this moment that I would think, well, I'm not so sure about them. And don't test me. And here we are. What are we doing? We're sharing all the tools to work with all of those things. So the practice isn't just about sitting quietly, though it's important to engage in all the different levels of it. Sitting quietly, and then we're actually out in the action, kind of. We're doing things with people, and things are happening, and conflicts are arising, and all sorts of things are coming about and unfolding and folding together and coming to an end and starting fresh. And an awful lot of those make you want to say, like, whoa, wait a minute, can we just slow down here? So that's good too. And then pretty soon you realize, I'm not where I was last month, now it's different. Hooray. It's okay.
I was going to answer that a little differently, which is
No.
when, not contradicting, but just sharing my own. I no longer take the whole box of crackers to my room at night and eat them all while I'm reading my latest novel. I now take a cupful. And then I'm not satisfied, but I feel better the next morning. So it's like changing one thing. I'm still going to eat my crackers or chips or whatever and read. It's really important to read while you eat them. That's like crucial. So, but I don't take, most of the time, I don't take the whole bag or the whole box, you know, because I will. I'll go through the whole thing and then go, oh my God, what did I just do? So, yeah, it feels trapped, but I've been just letting myself kind of do it. I heard the Dalai Lama takes a cup full of crackers in the evening, so that really inspired me. Maybe I could cut back.
Sanjay.
Thank you. Going back to Susan's topic of joy, and I was just thinking, a little bit louder, okay. I was just thinking, I feel like I'm one of the most joyful people I know, and I'm not sure why. I mean, there's some mystery. I don't feel like it's anything that I'm manufacturing. It's just happening. And when I look back through my life, most of my life has been extremely joyful and blissful, except for a period of about 2.5 years. And after I moved back to Portland, my wild kind of gypsy life of moving here, and you know, I was on the road for years and lived in all these countries, and no day was ever the same as any other day. And I came back to Portland in 1991, and I decided, let's see, I'm in my 60s, maybe it's time to grow up. And I told my sister and brother, I'm going to buy a house and start a business and, you know, act like a grown-up instead of wandering around and so forth. And so I did. And after about 15 years of that, it felt like I was repeating myself just over and over and over and over. And that made me feel a little depressed. And so some friends of mine, including Tara Franklin and others, were taking some antidepressants. So I thought, oh, I'll ask my doctor about that. He gave me Prozac, and I immediately went into a deep depression. And then I stopped Prozac and took 2 other antidepressants, and it got worse and worse and worse until I was feeling so horrible that I called the hospital one night and said, if I don't get something to help me, I'm going to commit suicide. Me? Yeah, that happened. And so they gave me some Xanax, and that allowed me to drive to work and back without being totally panic-stricken. But 2.5 years, I realized I was in a state of no emotion. I had no joy, I had no appetite, I had no anger. I was just like a zombie. And I tried everything I could think of to pull out of this, including, Michael might remember, I came and talked to him one time, but he didn't pull me out. I went to hypnotists, I went to psychotherapists, I went to acupuncturists, I went to everybody I could think of. And there was a Bhutanese Lama who came from Bhutan, Hai Lama, and Punso and I went down to see him, and he said some mantras of Hayagriva and held my head, and something moved and changed. And then there was another visit to somebody who was a shaman, and he did something called a soul retrieval, which is when your under a lot of pain, part of your psyche kind of breaks off, and the shaman can pull you back together again. So that helped, and then I kind of finally emerged 2.5 years later. I pulled out of that period, but I didn't think I was ever going to pull out of it. So afterwards, there was this great feeling of gratitude, and ever since then, I feel joyful all the time. And it's not that I'm manufacturing it or intending it, it's just the way I wake up and the way I respond to the world, and it's mysterious to me. But the thing that I'm really most grateful for is that I went through such suffering in this 2.5 years that I don't think I ever really suffered before that period. And that gave me, I think, insight into other people's suffering. So I'm grateful for that horrible experience, just to allow myself to be able to relate to others who are suffering in a way that I couldn't have before. For whatever that's worth.
This virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. Thank you all.